said this a bunch of times before, I grew up in West Texas on a cattle ranch. If that's where you're born and raised, you don't know any different. You think everybody lives just like you do, right? Because there wasn't the internet or social media back then, and I really didn't know any different. And it wasn't until I got a little bit older and kind of started, figuring out the world that I realized not everybody works hard, because growing up on a ranch, you learn to work hard when you're very young. It's a lot of hard work and it never ends. You're never done. I thought that was just the way life was. And until probably I moved to the city in Fort Worth, and I realized not everybody works hard. There's a lot of lazy fuckers out there. But you know what though? Those guys and girls don't ever amount to anything in life. I've talked about it before, the bodybuilders that inspired me early on were Rich Gaspari, Jordan Yates, and of course Ronnie. I saw Ronnie every day in the gym. The bodybuilders that inspired me the most for their professionalism, Lee Labrada. I met him when I was 17 years old. I won his competition down in Houston, won the teenage, the novice, and the open division. And he presented me my award on stage. I went backstage and talked to him, and I couldn't believe at the time he's one of the top, probably 3 bodybuilders on the planet. And he took 10 minutes to sit there and talk to me, and if I had any questions, said he'd give me advice, and he did over the years. And it just impressed me that somebody, it's his show, he's a top bodybuilder in the world, and he took that much time, out of his busy schedule to talk to me. And he talked to me several times over the years and gave me some really good advice, and that just really impressed me. And I've seen Lee do it with other people. He's always got time for everybody. He's professional, he's soft-spoken. I've never heard him utter a bad word about anybody. I think that speaks volumes about the man that he is. If you're ever gonna make it to Mr. Olympia, you're definitely gonna win if you're not into it mentally. I mean, it's majority mental. Of course, it's a physical sport, right? Because we judge on how we look and our physical appearance, but it's mental, because it will wear you down and grind you into the ground if you're not mentally tough, if you don't know how to handle it mentally. The amount of discipline this sport requires is unfathomable to most, and the nutrition you never get away from. You got to eat the right foods, the right amount of foods at the right time every single day of your life, year after year after year. And that's what most people can't do. There's a lot of great guys and girls out there with great physiques, but they can't get in shape and realize their maximum potential because they can't do the nutrition the way they need to. And that's really separates the men from the boys. To make it to the top levels of our sport, and it's any sport, I think you've got to leverage your accomplishment and your success on stage, whether it's on the field or on the court or whatever your chosen sport is. What that means is maximize your publicity, get as much positive coverage as you can, treat people right. The golden rule, doing to others as you want them to do unto you. And that really rings true, because I've seen some great champions that didn't treat the fans right, didn't act right. They don't do too well after the sport. But if you treat people right and treat them with respect, take time for everybody, work hard, be a good guy, be professional, show up on time for your appearances, and do what you're supposed to do, and you're successful on stage, then that success will carry on after the stage is over and you're in the next phase of your life. Once my career took off and I started traveling, I kept notes everywhere I went. Every time I did a store appearance or a gym appearance or wherever I went to expos, and I kept notes, names, contacts, where I met the guys at, and because I knew one day bodybuilding would be over, and I kind of suspected I'd still be involved in the fitness industry, which I am. And I think, maintaining those contacts, making those friendships have really paid dividends over the years. A lot of these people I met over the years, traveling, doing appearances and guest posings, I do business with now. So I think, it's just, once again, just be a good dude, treat people right, create a network, and then leverage that network as you get older and as you move into a different chapter of your life. Craziest workouts? Fuck, I don't know, man. People ask me what was my hardest workout I ever did. Man, I honestly don't know. Every time I went to the gym, I tried to do better than I did the week before. Every time I trained chest or back or legs, I try to do more and be better than the week before, right? A lot of times I succeeded. Sometimes I didn't, that week. But I've trained so hard, I've thrown up more times than I can remember. I've bled. I busted vessels in my eye. My nose has bled. I ripped the skin off my shins, ripped the skin off my palms from gripping the bar. As far as what was my hardest workout, I couldn't even begin to tell you. There was days that you think you're gonna die, right? But you just keep pushing forward and you survive, and then you get stronger. If you do that long enough and hard enough, then you just get better and better and better. You get stronger and you get bigger, and then you get to where you don't throw up anymore. You know, we developed our own style over the years, so, you know, love it or hate it, it worked for us. We kind of developed it over the years. You know, Johnny came from a powerlifting background. He's a really good world-class powerlifter. I did a lot of powerlifting when I was younger, and, you know, we just kind of bonded the two. You know, we came from Metroflex Gym and a lot of influence from Brian there. And so, you know, progressive overload, you got to do it to grow, right? You know, we did drop sets, we took sets to failure, did forced reps. Sometimes we supersetted, not very often. You know, the key to all of that though is bringing intensity, because you can make 100 pounds feel like a 300 pounds if you have the right intensity. You know, we did everything. You know, we were explosive. Sometimes we did slower reps. There's a lot of stuff we did early in our career that we didn't film, probably because of me, because I was so anti-camera and everything when I was younger. I wish we could have caught some of this stuff, especially when we were training for size and strength. You know, sometimes we trained for powerlifting meets, so our training was different and we never caught any of that on film. I wish we would have, but, you know, hindsight's 20/20.